Amelia Stone had worked tirelessly for Hart and Finch Consulting for the past 5 years, building strategies, staying late at the office, and making personal sacrifices that most people wouldn't even consider. As a senior project strategist, she had been the mastermind behind the most complex plans the firm had ever attempted, none more significant than the project that would land them a multi-million-dollar deal with Sterling Enterprises, one of the largest tech companies in the world. The contract was a game-changer. It would solidify Hart and Finch as a dominant player in the consulting industry. For Amelia, it was the culmination of years of dedication. She poured every ounce of her energy into crafting a proposal that would not only meet but exceed Sterling's high expectations. It took months of data crunching, market analysis, and countless revisions. But when it was done, she knew it would be a success. She was proud of it. The work was hers. And it was a masterpiece. 2 days before the proposal was set to be presented, Amelia walked into Richard Pierce's office. Richard, the firm's charismatic but notoriously self-serving CEO, was preparing the final presentation materials. Amelia glanced at the desk and saw the completed proposal sitting there, the one she had spent 3 months working on. She felt a small, unexpected pang in her chest when she saw that her name was nowhere on the document. Instead, Richard's name was printed at the top, as if he had been the one to lead the project from start to finish. She knew something was wrong. "Richard," she asked, keeping her voice steady, "where's my name?" Richard didn't even glance up from his work. "Oh, don't worry about that, Amelia. You'll get credit internally, but this is just how things work. We'll present it as my work, and I'll take it from here. You know how it is, right?" Amelia tried to suppress the frustration building inside her. This was her project, her strategy, and Richard was going to steal all the credit. She had heard about the ways Richard had taken credit for the work of others, but she had never imagined he would do it to her. But she didn't fight back. She should have. But in the moment, she swallowed her anger, nodded, and left the room. The next day, the presentation was a success. The client loved the proposal, and the deal was signed. Hart and Finch had secured the contract, making history in the consulting world. But Amelia knew the truth, and so did Richard. Yet the accolades went to Richard. The team celebrated him for his brilliance, his leadership. His name was everywhere. Amelia was forgotten, and her work was erased. 2 weeks later, Amelia was called into Richard's office. As she walked in, she felt a strange sense of déjà vu. The stale smell of coffee and expensive cologne filled the room, and the hum of the air conditioner seemed louder than usual. Richard was sitting behind his desk, his fingers lightly tapping the paperwork in front of him. "Amelia," he said without looking up, "I'm sorry, but this is just how it goes. It's restructuring. We need fresh voices, new energy. You've done a great job, but it's time to move on." Her heart sank, but she kept her composure. Amelia had been here before. Fired. The term restructuring wasn't new, but this time it felt personal. After all the late nights, the missed family dinners, and the sacrifices she had made for Hart and Finch, this was how it ended. "Effective immediately," Richard added, sliding the termination papers across his desk. His voice was cold, detached. "It's nothing personal. You'll be fine. Just a minor setback." Amelia felt the sting of betrayal deep in her chest, but she didn't let it show. She had always been the one to hide her emotions, to keep her head high no matter what life threw her way. But inside, she was crushed. She stood up, feeling the weight of the situation bear down on her. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the papers, but she forced herself to speak calmly. "Thank you for the opportunity, Richard," she said softly, her voice steady. Richard looked at her, surprised by her calmness. He probably expected her to break down, to beg, or to lash out. But Amelia had already made up her mind. She wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. She walked out of the office, the HR representative following closely behind. Her keycard was deactivated before she even made it to the elevator, and her email account was disabled as soon as she reached her car in the parking garage. She sat in her car for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel as her heart pounded in her chest. It wasn't just anger that filled her. It was the realization that she had been used. She had worked for Richard, poured everything into her job, and still, she was discarded like a piece of paper. She thought of her daughter, Maya, at home, the rent, and the tuition she still needed to pay for. It wasn't just her career on the line now. It was her life, her future. But Amelia wasn't one to just give up. She had been knocked down before and had rebuilt herself. She knew it was time to rise again. She had one thing Richard didn't: proof. That night, as the city froze outside her window, Amelia opened her personal laptop and logged into her cloud archive. She had saved every version of the proposal, every draft, and every note. Even the original concept sketch with her name and timestamp was there. She didn't expect to need it. She just believed in backing up her work. Amelia sat in her apartment that night, staring at her laptop. She had just been fired, humiliated, and stripped of the credit for the work she had poured her soul into. Yet, there was a small sense of defiance building inside her. Richard Pierce, her boss, thought he could erase her, but she knew she wasn't someone who could simply be forgotten. As the wind howled outside her window, she thought about the email she was about to send. It felt risky, but it was the only thing she could do. For years, she had maintained professional relationships with clients, building a network based on trust and integrity. One of those clients, Emily Roberts, was someone Amelia had worked with 6 years ago when Emily was still running a fledgling tech startup. Emily had always been sharp, driven, and ethical, someone Amelia respected deeply. Emily had once told her, "If you ever need a real opportunity, call me. The people who build things deserve more than the people who sell them." At the time, Amelia had been too busy building her career at Hart and Finch to take Emily up on that offer. But now, sitting in her dimly lit apartment, Amelia realized this might be the chance she had been waiting for. She opened her contacts list and found Emily's name at the top. With a deep breath, Amelia began to write. Subject: The real author of your proposal. Dear Emily, I hope this finds you well. You may not remember me, but we worked together during your early funding round. I'm writing because I recently left Hart and Finch Consulting, and there's something you need to know about the Fallner proposal. I've attached the original documents, the ones I created, including all drafts and final versions. I want you to know that the work presented to you was mine. Richard Pierce, my former boss, removed my name from the proposal and presented it as his own. I didn't fight it then, but I can't let it slide now. I understand if you need to verify this, but I wanted you to hear it from me first. Best, Amelia Stone. She clicked, send. Her fingers trembling slightly as the email whooshed into Emily's inbox. Amelia wasn't sure what she was expecting, whether Emily would even read it, or if she would dismiss it as a petty accusation. But the minute she hit send, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had done something. Just as she was about to close her laptop and try to sleep, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. Subject: IRE. The real author of your proposal. Claire, of course, I remember you. I still use the growth model you built for our Series B funding round. Thank you for reaching out. Let's talk. I have some questions and an opportunity I think you'll want to hear about. Amelia's heart skipped a beat. Emily remembered her work, and she was ready to listen. Before Amelia could process it fully, her phone buzzed again. This time, a call from Emily herself. Amelia? Emily's voice was calm, but there was an edge of concern. I've read everything you sent, and I'm livid. I knew the proposal wasn't authored by the person who presented it to us. You have a unique approach, and it's clear to me now that this is all your work. Amelia felt a wave of relief. I didn't want to make a fuss, but I couldn't let it slide, she said, her voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside her. Let me take care of this, Emily said, her tone firm. I'll be terminating our contract with Hart and Finch, effective immediately. I don't do business with liars, and I won't reward theft. But I don't want your work to go to waste. In fact, I have an idea for a new venture I'm launching. I want you to come in as a partner, and I'm offering you the CEO position. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. CEO? After everything that had happened, she hadn't expected this. I want you to lead, Amelia, Emily continued. You've got the vision. I've always respected your work. Let's build something real, something honest. Let me know what you think. Amelia sat in stunned silence for a moment. Was this really happening? The world felt like it was turning upside down, but this time, Amelia wasn't on the bottom. Emily, I don't know what to say. She paused, then added, I think I need to think about it. This is a lot. I understand, Emily replied, her voice softening. Take your time, but don't wait too long. I'm serious. You deserve more than a footnote in someone else's story. You have a chance to create your own now. The call ended, and Amelia sat there, her mind racing. She had gone from being a discarded employee to being offered the chance to lead her own firm. She had always dreamed of creating something from scratch, but she had never imagined it would come so quickly, or in such a dramatic way. Later that night, Amelia lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her daughter, Maya, was asleep in the next room. Amelia hadn't told her what happened yet. She didn't want to worry her, but she couldn't help but think about how everything had changed in the span of one day. She had always worked hard for others, building their empires. Now, for the first time, she had the opportunity to build her own. And this time, no one would take credit for her work. This time, Amelia was the one in control. The next morning, she woke early. She grabbed her phone, dialed Emily's number, and when Emily picked up, Amelia said, I'm in. Let's do this. Emily's voice crackled with excitement. Great! I'll have the papers ready. Let's get started. Amelia Stone woke up the next morning with a sense of determination she hadn't felt in years. She was no longer the woman who had been fired without explanation. She was no longer the woman whose hard work had been stolen by Richard Pierce. She was the CEO of Ascend Strategy, ready to build a company that valued integrity, transparency, and the people who truly built things. In the weeks that followed, Ascend Strategy took off like a rocket. Amelia and Emily worked together tirelessly, assembling a team of like-minded professionals who shared their vision for creating a business based on ethics and sustainable success. But while they were moving forward, Amelia couldn't forget what had happened at Hart and Finch. Her former boss, Richard Pierce, was doing everything he could to spin the narrative of her departure. He claimed Amelia had been difficult to manage and that her performance had declined, a story that would eventually reach the board and the clients. Amelia wasn't surprised. She had seen it before, the corporate machine trying to bury someone who had the audacity to question the status quo. But she had something that Richard didn't: the truth. It wasn't long before the consequences of Richard's actions began to unravel. News of the terminated contract with Hart and Finch started to leak. Ascentech, Emily's company, wasn't just another client. It was a significant partner, and their departure was a blow to Hart and Finch's credibility. Amelia wasn't just watching from the sidelines anymore. She was the one causing the ripple effect. The first message Amelia received came from one of her former colleagues at Hart and Finch, Julia. Julia had always been quiet, the kind of person who kept her head down and avoided confrontation. But now she was speaking up. Claire, I don't know if you've seen what's being said, but I want you to know I've got your back. We all know the truth. If you ever need a witness, I'm in. Amelia smiled softly, touched by the support. Julia wasn't the only one. In the days that followed, more and more messages arrived from former colleagues, each one expressing similar stories of being overlooked, ignored, or erased by Richard and the other executives at Hart and Finch. Some of them had been too afraid to speak up. Some had stayed silent to protect their careers. But now, with Amelia leading Ascend Strategy, they were ready to come forward. It wasn't just support Amelia had gained. She had documentation, emails, project logs, performance reviews, and memos that painted a clear picture of the manipulation, mismanagement, and unethical behavior that had defined the culture at Hart and Finch for years. She hadn't saved them for this moment. She had just been the type of person to always keep records. But now, those records were her weapon. The tipping point came when Amelia received an anonymous email from one of her former contacts at Hart and Finch. The message was brief, but its contents shook Amelia to the core. The board is investigating leadership conduct. There's talk of a leadership transition. You didn't just walk away. You exposed something we've all been ignoring. Amelia knew then that it was only a matter of time before everything started to collapse for Richard and Hart and Finch. As the investigation deepened, the firm's stock price dropped. The media picked up on the story, and soon the headlines were dominated by the downfall of the once prominent consulting firm. All the while, Ascend Strategy thrived, securing new contracts and building its reputation as a firm that prioritized ethics over profits. But Richard wasn't going down without a fight. He hired a crisis management firm to salvage his image and launched a public relations campaign, hoping to restore the firm's reputation. But Amelia wasn't interested in his spin. She wasn't about revenge. She was about taking back what was rightfully hers. And the real payback came when Richard tried to salvage the contract with Ascentech. Emily forwarded the email to Amelia with a single note. "He wants to talk to the CEO. Your move." Amelia had been waiting for this moment. The call came the next day, and when Richard's voice crackled through the line, Amelia could hear the desperation in it. "Claire, I wasn't expecting you," he stammered. "I figured," Amelia replied, her voice steady. "You were trying to reach the CEO of Ascend Strategy. That's me now." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Richard's breathing grew shallow, and for a moment, Amelia could hear the panic setting in. "You were trying to reach the CEO of Ascend Strategy," she repeated calmly. "I'm the one who's now in charge, Richard. Look, Claire, this is clearly some kind of misunderstanding. I didn't know there was an issue between you and the firm. Had I known you were still involved, I would have handled things differently. But you've got to understand, I was under pressure. There was a lot at stake. You know how this business works. And honestly, Claire, you're a talented analyst, but you were never leadership material." Amelia's heart clenched at the familiar words. She had heard them so many times before, always from Richard's lips, always in an attempt to belittle her. But she wasn't that person anymore. She leaned forward in her chair, her voice icy now. "You made a mistake, Richard. You thought I was dispensable. But you're wrong. I'm not the one who should be worried about the future. You are." There was a long pause. Then Richard sighed deeply. "You used to be different," he said, as if it was an insult. "You used to be grateful." Amelia could feel the anger rising in her chest, but she stayed calm. "Grateful? For what? For being ignored? For having my work stolen?" "No, Richard. I'm not grateful for that. I was loyal. But you crossed a line." The call ended, and Amelia felt a strange sense of satisfaction. She had finally stood up for herself, and it felt good. The next day, the stories began circulating within the industry. Word of Richard's misconduct spread, and the fallout from the termination of the Faulkner contract was felt far and wide. Richard's leadership at Hart and Finch was questioned publicly, and soon after, he was placed on administrative leave. The board, unable to ignore the pressure any longer, launched an internal investigation into his actions. As for Amelia, she wasn't just watching from the sidelines. She was leading Ascend Strategy to new heights, with clients lining up and a reputation for integrity that was spreading like wildfire. Amelia had come full circle. She had gone from being fired, erased, and discarded to becoming the CEO of her own firm, leading with integrity and creating something that was truly hers. She was no longer the woman in the shadows. She was the woman who defined the narrative. And when she sat at the head of the table in her sleek, modern office, Surrounded by a team of professionals who admired her leadership, Amelia finally understood that her true victory wasn't just in her success. It was in the way she refused to let anyone erase her again.